opiates come from the poppy seed, and there's a long history about opiate pills, which is another whole subject into itself. But in the 1980s, especially the 90s, doctors began to give out opiate pills, drug pain pills, and they kept giving them out. Certain doctors gave out more and more and more. But the story about how all this happened is not just the doctors. It's much more than that, and it's a pretty long story. But anyway, people that take opiates, whether prescribed or otherwise, they develop tolerance to the drug. Okay, so the dose of the drug keeps going up because they don't get the same effect out of whatever they've been taking. A few months later, they got to go up in dose, and that's what leads to addiction. The true definition of addiction is the development of tolerance. Tolerance means you've got to increase the dose. And if you had a drug, pain medicine, that never developed tolerance, you'd have something. But there isn't anything like that for different reasons, I guess. So it's weird, but the Joint Commission of Accreditation of Hospitals, which is a semi-governmental body that regulates hospitals, they had a man join their board in the early 90s, and he started the 5th vital sign. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but there's blood pressure, pulse, temperature, and respiration. So he decided they should make another vital sign, which is using a pain scale of 0 to 10. So every patient that got admitted had to be administered a pain scale by the nurse.
The cow scale, correct?
What's that?
The cow scale, correct?
It may be. I don't know if that's the name of it or not. But if you didn't do that and Joint Commission caught you, it was a $250,000 fine. And so everybody had to have this scale done, and the patient could decide himself how much pain they're in, which I guess to some degree is okay, but people found out that if they exaggerated their pain, they could get a lot more pain pills. So that's how I got started. And in 2000, the Joint Commission actually wrote a book requesting and forcing all physicians to prescribe opiates for pain. They were all for it, and they had no idea what they were doing, but that's how it all got started. And that led to people leaving the hospital that got a prescription for opiates, and then, so they got pain pills from various doctors. They went through pain doctors or their family doctors. There was no restriction on how much pain medicine you could prescribe. And pretty soon the pharma companies, like I won't name them, but you know what I'm talking about, started pushing pain pills big time. For instance, there was a pharmacy in West Virginia that looked like a broken down shack. It's probably 1,200 square feet. It was falling down on one side. That pharmacy alone dispensed 2 million doses of pain medicine in 2 years. So it got way out of hand. And so the next bad thing that happened was I was sitting in my living room. We had a piece of mail on a Friday, opened it up. It was from the Medical Licensing Board of Indiana. And they had instituted a new policy where doctors could only prescribe a certain amount of pain pills, much, much less, not enough to cover the patient's needs by any means. So they thought everybody's just going to quit using them like magic. Well, that's not what happened. Guess what? They went to heroin, and that started off this heroin epidemic that has gone crazy and is killing all these people that we have in our country. You may or may not be familiar with a city in Scott County called Auburn, Indiana. Is it Auburn? Austin, Indiana. And in that city, of about the center of the city is about 500 people. The county is about 4,000 or 5,000. But in the center of that city, they couldn't get pain pills anymore. And so people banded together, rented houses, pooled their money, and they bought heroin. and they put whatever money they had left, they bought food. And that started 3 months after this edict came down from the Medical Licensing Board. By February, the epidemic was known to the county health officer. He knew something was going on with opium, with heroin. And from February to May, when the story broke and made national news, half of the city, the central part of the city, 500 people, half of them had HIV from sharing needles. Absolute tragedy. And when they asked the health officer, why didn't you tell somebody? Because he knew about it. He said, well, my job description says the state of Indiana is supposed to ask me, but they never did. He said, couldn't you have said something? And he was just oblivious. And his office was 40 feet away from the one doctor that treated AIDS in that city. It was itinerant, you go to different cities, Bloomington, and never said a word to him about it. It's just an amazing story of suffering. And these people are going to be with, AIDS can be treated pretty effectively, but it's a tragedy to have to live with that, and to be a victim of this stuff. I mean, it's not just bad for them, it's bad for us. We have to pay all their bills, millions and millions of dollars, because of one stupid person. But many, many states around the country did the exact same thing. And there's videos touting, oh, we're really getting this under control. And then here comes the statistics on heroin. Everybody's on heroin. It's cheaper, it's accessible, but they use dirty needles. So you would think we had an exchange program for needles, okay? And at that time, I think there was only 10 counties or 11 that had an exchange program in the whole state. And you would think, well, very quickly we would have an exchange program that would spread throughout the entire state. I think there's only still about 14 counties that have an exchange program. I may be wrong about that. Marion County didn't institute one until about a year ago, I think. Politically, it just people didn't like that. But my God, you can prevent HIV with that simple thing. And there's a lot of mistakes have been made. And we're going to suffer from everybody is for a long time. So opiate drug abuse is the scourge of our country. There's only 2.5 million addicts. When you look at like 20 or 30 million people with sleep disorders, the average economic impact has been estimated just from opiate drug abuse to be $500 billion, that's a B, $billion a year. We have 180,000 people in prison on an annual basis, prisons, state and local jails. We spend $18 billion on incarcerating people. And it doesn't do any good. That's the problem. If you look at my app, I developed the world's first and only comprehensive app on opiate drug abuse. It was built by App Press, and so when I got in, I was getting ready to turn in my content for the app, and I said, here's my recommendations, that we give buprenorphine, so everybody needs it, for free for life. Of course, that would be a revolutionary idea. Nobody's going to do that. But France did that. And they reduced their fatal overdose rate in 4 years by 80%. 80%. So instead of having 50,000 people die last year, we would have had 10,000 die. And countless families that wouldn't be. And the jails would probably unload because people keep getting arrested over and over again for heroin and stuff. So it's just, and I've been spending the last 3 years trying to get somebody's attention to change our policy. And unfortunately, I haven't gotten very far. So that's it. That's kind of the small story of opiate abuse.